Guru, made for you.
This video is an introduction to the upcoming unit on polynomials. And this video is basically an introduction that's going to make you learn what a polynomial actually is, because we can't add, subtract, multiply, divide polynomials until we know what they exactly are. So this video will contain lots of vocabulary that you will constantly hear in the following videos. So let's start with the first term, which is monomial. And a monomial is a number or a variable or either of them multiplied together. So an example would be, let's say, 3. Another example would be x. And another example would be y. So try that again. Another example would be y. And another example would be xy, because multiplication is allowed to be a monomial, and a combination of variables and numbers multiplied together. So 25x squared yza to the 15th. This would also be considered a monomial because all of them are multiplied together, no addition or subtraction. And when we do add addition and subtraction in the middle, it will be called a polynomial. That's what a polynomial is. A polynomial is a bunch of monomials that are either added together or subtracted from each other. So an example would be 3x squared plus 5x minus 3. This would be a polynomial because we have 3 monomials here. And since we have 3 monomials, this is a special polynomial called a trinomial. And because it has 3 terms. And if we had a term polynomial that had 2 terms, like 7x minus 5, this would be called a binomial because it has 2 terms. While a trinomial has 3 terms. And since we're talking about special polynomials, let's talk about special monomials. Monomials that are just numbers, like 3, will be considered a constant monomial, or just constant. And our next one is going to be coefficient. So let's say we have a monomial, like negative 3xy. Let me change a different color. Let's say we have a monomial, like negative 3xy squared. Let's say we have that monomial. The coefficient of this monomial will be the number, the constant number, that is in front of the monomial, which would be a negative 3. So negative 3 is the coefficient. And if 2 terms have everything the same except for the coefficient, like let's say 5x and negative 7x, these 2 terms are considered like terms or similar terms. Similar or like terms. Because everything is the same about them except for the coefficient, which is different. So if we had some crazy number like x squared yza to the 15th, we had this 25x squared yza to the 15th, and we had negative x squared yz a to the 15th, those two would also be considered like terms because everything is the same except for the coefficient. And if we have a polynomial like this one, we want to put it in descending order of degree. So let's talk about degree now. The degree of a monomial is the sum of the degree of the variables. So the degree of the variable in a monomial, let's say we have a monomial, let's take this one again, negative 3xy squared. So the degree of the y here, the degree is the number of times this y appears multiplied in this monomial. And since it's squared, that means it comes twice. So the degree of y would be 2. The degree of x will be 1. If we're finding the degree of a monomial, the monomial is the sum of the degree of the variables. And numbers, like this coefficient, negative 3 here, have no degree. Their degree is 0. So you're just adding the number of times the variable appears in that monomial. So the degree of the monomial, is 3, because 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. Now the degree of a polynomial is the greatest degree of its monomials. So if we have this polynomial here, the degree of the polynomial would be the greatest of the degrees of its monomials. So the degree of this monomial is 2. The degree of this monomial is 1, and the degree of this monomial is 0. So the degree of the polynomial would be 2, because 2 is the greatest degree of its monomials. And when we arrange a polynomial, like it's done here, we always put it in descending order of degree. So we always put the greatest degree on the left and the smallest degree on the right. And when we do that, we can find the leading coefficient. The leading coefficient is the coefficient of the monomial that has the highest degree in the polynomial. So in that case, if you arrange it in descending order of degree, then the highest degree monomial would always be on the left. So that would mean that the coefficient of that monomial on the left would be your leading coefficient. And in this case, it's negative 3, because it's the coefficient of the monomial that has the highest degree in the polynomial. Now let's talk about how we find degree and leading coefficient. Let's try some problems. So let's have this monomial here. Actually, no, never mind. Let's have this polynomial here. Let's say we have negative 5x plus 3x squared minus 5. So the first thing we want to do here is arrange it in descending order of degree. So since this has a degree of 2 and this has a degree of 1, we should switch these so that the highest degree is on the left, and this one would be in the middle because it has a degree of 1. So it would be 3x squared minus 5x minus 5. So that means the degree would be 2 of the polynomial, would be 2, because that's the highest degree of its monomials. And the leading coefficient, I don't know if I spelled that right, but leading coefficient would be 3, because it's the coefficient of the term with the greatest degree. And that's how you find degree and leading coefficient, and this is the introduction to polynomials. Thanks for watching. Guru.